50 years ago, CIA-trained Bolivian forces killed Che Guevara, but his message and popularity remains strong all over the world. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. Ernesto Che Guevara was an Argentinian doctor who helped Fidel Castro overthrow the Cuban government of Fulgencio Batista in 1959. Guevara became one of the most important leaders in Cuba's revolutionary government, heading the central bank and industry ministry. He had hoped to replicate the revolution in Congo and then Bolivia, where he was captured and ultimately killed. 50 years later, his spirit of freedom and rebellion lives on throughout Latin America. We begin our coverage with CGTN's Michael Voss in Havana.
Che Guevara's tomb lies beneath a mausoleum in Santa Clara, about 300 kilometers from the capital, Havana. This is the city where Che won his most important victory during the Cuban Revolution. On Sunday, several thousand Cubans gathered there to honor his memory. Many in the crowd were waving cards carrying his portrait. Cuba's president, Raul Castro, who fought alongside Che Guevara during the Cuban Revolution, attended the ceremony and laid a white rose at Che's tomb. The Argentine-born doctor turned Marxist revolutionary is a national hero here. To this day, primary school children at their weekly assembly chant, "We are the pioneers of communism and will be like Che." Local children came to repeat that at Sunday's ceremony. A second colourful event took place in Bolivia on Monday, the actual anniversary of Che Guevara's death. Bolivia's president, Evo Morales, travelled to the small town of Valle Grande. This is where Che Guevara was buried in a hidden grave back in 1967. His remains were rediscovered there 30 years later and returned to Cuba for a state funeral. Hundreds of Bolivians were joined by some of Che Guevara's descendants and a few surviving veterans of the campaign. Che Guevara died on October the 9th, 1967, in the tiny village of La Higuera, executed after being captured wounded nearby. I visited both places in August. They're part of the Che Trail, set up 10 years ago to bring tourist income to this isolated, impoverished part of southern Bolivia. La Higuera is now full of statues of Che Guevara with his portrait painted on many of the walls. There's also a Cuban medical team living and working in the village. They're part of a 15-strong Cuban medical contingent based out of the main hospital in Valle Grande. In the past, Cuba and Che Guevara tried to spread revolution through armed struggle. Now, these days, Cuba's using medical diplomacy to win hearts and minds.